Well, I'll just listen to you because we're going to go from classic wrestling, the good stuff,
Yeah.
to WWE Raw. It's all in the eye of the beholder.
Well, here's the thing. Now you've surprised me here with the classic audio, because what I was going to say was that this Raw for July 15th from Dayton, Ohio, by the way, at the Nutter Center. There's another Nutter Center in the world. I'd like to know about it. That's the only Nutter Center I know of. But this now, I hate to praise it after praising what Lance Russell and those fellas were doing, because it's two completely different things. This is not a professional wrestling program anymore. However, I think it's maybe the first one that I actually fucking liked, even though it has nothing to do with goddamn wrestling. Whatever it is that you want to call what they're doing, whether it's the sports entertainment or the reality television, they know how to tell a good story these days. Was Vince McMahon really that much of an anchor around their fucking necks all this time?
Yeah, because I think it's one of those things you could always look to and point at least going back 30 years, if not longer, but at least 30 years. The idea that Vince was handed things that he didn't make as much money as he could with because he couldn't understand how to get it right, because it was already right. And he tinkered with everything. I just saw a video the other day of The Undertaker talking. Finally, he says something negative about Vince. He goes, yeah, he had some bad ideas. He wanted me to do this, and I had to put my foot down about throwing his hat out into the crowd. I forgot about that. The Undertaker, like Leaping Lanny, frisbeeing his hat into the crowd. Yeah, Vince, that may not go with the gimmick, but Vince had lots of wacky ideas, and the entire show was built towards Vince. He was the audience. It was an audience of one. We all just got to watch. Now, it's a conscious effort to make the fans, to have the fans as invested as they can be, as opposed to taking the fans for granted. This is wrestling. They'll like it. I'm going to present what I want. They'll shut up. Because that's what it was under Vince.
Well, and to make the talent what they can be, rather than what Vince sees them. He wanted to call Vader the Mastodon. He wanted to make Mick Foley Mason the Mutilator. I mean, he would get these ideas. Need I go any further than the maximum male models?
See, that's the conundrum, because you could point to all the success, but you could say, well, maybe if he had brought them in as the Road Warriors as heels against Demolition, who were wildly over as baby faces, that would have been different. But they were the LOD instead, wearing red instead of black. And it was more kid-friendly. There are one mistake after another, you could say, like that, where even with the success, why are you doing this? What are you doing? And you can look at the other options and go, they may have made more money in the short term and long term if they had done something different.
And with the exception of having to change everyone and the constant goofy gimmicks, the TL hoppers and the, just killing people's chances, right? He had a grip on the top shit, the main event stuff, that with those guys that were in the mix, it seemed like he had a grip on that, and then he would let all of us, everyone involved, fill in the pieces. But of late, this is a drastic turnaround back to this shit makes sense from 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next, 1 year to the next, without constant last-minute changes and whim changes and whatever the fuck. These people will allow more legitimacy to creep in rather than his weird version of, wanting to be the Walt Disney of wrestling. So if you don't watch the matches, is what I'm trying to say. There's no reason to. You can if you like, if you've got that much time, but just watch the people talk and interact with each other. And It's a heck of a story they tell, but it also moves somewhat slowly. So this is basically was Raw as Ripley, right?
Well, and Braun, maybe.
Well, Raw as Ripley with guest stars. Because through the whole thing, I'm going to give you the whole goddamn Rhea thing from start to finish instead of going in chronological order. We'll save a lot of time. But again, I've said I don't like Liv Morgan's acting or her wrestling. I don't know if you blew an air hose in her right ear, if air would come out the left ear or not.
Where the hell is that coming from? She's playing a character.
But wasn't she the one that got pulled over and the cop read her notebook, said she wanted to win an Oscar?
Yeah, that's a goal to have.
That's a goal to, well, and I'd like to go to the moon one day.
You can write that down. It may happen.
Yeah.
You want to spend a few bucks, it could happen.
But anyway, the comedic aspect with Damian Priest being involved in it, and they're trying to make him the world champion with the whole Judgment Day Club, all the things I've said, blah. But when they did the package of Rhea and Liv and Dom and their various triangle since Rhea's been hurt, they tell a hell of a story and it all fits. They can go back and put these things in and nothing's out of place. Did you notice that? Or did you pay any attention to the cold open of the program?
No, I did pay attention because I wanted to see how they were going to start. I figured it would be with Rhea Ripley, and I've enjoyed Liv Morgan in this stuff. She's made the Judgment Day more tolerable because I think she's been good in this role. I know you don't think she can act. If this is her acting, I think she's good, and she's not as small as you make her out to be. There are plenty of women in that company and in AEW you can point to and say they're a lot smaller.
Well, then when I point at them, I got 3 more fingers pointing back at me. So what am I going to do with those 3 fingers?
Well, do what Lanny would do. Blow yourself.
The point I'm trying to make, Brian, is that they fit this all together. They lay the story out. It makes sense. It's not wishy-washy people doing nonsensical things like you see on some of the broadcasts from some of the promotions these days. And then here comes Rhea Ripley through the back, through Gorilla, the Fancy Dan entrance shot they're doing these days, the music straight into the arena, huge pop. What an entrance she's got, the attitude, she's a megastar. The fans are chanting, "Mommy, Mommy." And she says Mommy's home, and she's as over as any of the guys. And as soon as she mentions Liv Morgan, the big boos from the the people are into it. They're trained already. She didn't even have to speak. I'll deal with Dominic later, but Liv Morgan, boo! She wants her title back. She calls Liv out. And then there's Dominic music. And that's the theme of the whole show. Is Dominic coming out mealy-mouthed with his head down and shit-kicking, body language and trying to apologize. Of course, they're booing him every time he opens his mouth. Rhea turns her back on him. Then Liv gets on the screen and cuts a promo on Rhea, is burying Dominic. Oh, we've had such fun. And then now she says, Mommy may be home, but Liv is finally on top. So again, the people they're hanging on this, right? And they're popping in all the right places. And so Rhea challenges Liv for SummerSlam for the title, big pop. Then Liv blows Dominic a kiss and says, I'm not the same person I used to be. I'm going to beat you. And hi, Dom, Daddy Dom. And then Rhea comes back and blows her a kiss and just poses and gets a fucking pop and walks away from Dominic with him chasing behind her to give her a black rose that she then throws over her shoulder and walks off on him. And then the break is just a momentary interlude because they're in the back now, and Dominic is still after Rhea, and she won't listen. She slams a door in his face. And then she opens it and throws his flowers out all over him. And through this whole thing all night, Damian Priest is laughing at him and stirring the shit. Well, you better do this, and that's bad advice. So it's like this is my pride. The world champion that's struggling to be seen as a world champion is joking around in the back with, him or JD or Finn or Carlito or whatever. And it just doesn't Damian seem too calm and steady and level-headed and personable to be a really fearsome world champion?
Even with Rhea here, it's the one problem I have complained about before. We see her out there doing a fired-up promo, and then next thing, hey, Damian, how are you?
Oh, yes.
I'm fine, how are you? Like, just what is this shit backstage? And the only thing I'll say is Carlito has come into his own, probably saving himself a job for a while.
Yeah.
He's been entertaining in this. He's done well in, this version of they needed goof in the Judgment Day, because it was R-Truth before this. But it feels like, again, I repeat what I've said before because you asked, Damian Priest does not feel like a world champion right now. And if he's going to be a transitional champion in terms of Gunther about to go on a run, or if they're going to swerve us from that because it seems obvious, which would be a mistake, but then they got to figure out something to do with him. And if he's going to break away from Judgment Day, he shouldn't be so nonchalant around everything right now.
Somehow somebody affiliated with the Judgment Day can cost him the title to Gunther and facilitate the eventual separation of the parties.
What if he ran off with Liv?
Now, what now?
What if it turned out that Liv was actually Priest's girl this whole time? That he was pulling some kind of manipulative strings behind the scenes to cause friction with Dominic and Rhea for who knows what reason?
No, I'm thinking Finn either does something that he's not supposed to do or doesn't do something he's supposed to do. And that way Gunther beats Priest for the title, but there's Priest and Finn, boom, boom, and the other guys are on Finn's side, hopefully. Something of that nature. But nevertheless, that's not till later, and this is now, because then we're in the back with Rhea. And as you mentioned, thanks, Damian, for keeping the Judgment Day together while I was gone. And just, and why is Carlito in our clubhouse? And then Dominic comes in and apologizes again. She tells him off again and walks out. And then they do, some more stuff and have a match with the ladies. And then they're back in the back with Dominic and Priest. Why did you warn me last week, Dominic says, that you knew Rhea was here and she was going to see Liv on top of me, giving me the old fucking reverse cowgirl or whatever. Well, you were too busy with Liv. Well, and then Jey Uso comes in. And boy, I don't know how long this mass hypnosis is going to last with Jey Uso if his matches get any more silly, hot doggy, and work looks sloppier. Because a man cannot live on personality alone forever. But anyway, Jay came in and asked if Rhea Ripley was single. And then Damian's like, maybe. And now Dominic's fucking fuming. And Priest said, well, you got to show Jey Uso who Rhea Ripley belongs to. And if Dominic runs off to do that, and Priest is laughing. What is this, high school? Yeah, it's a great story with all of the stooges. Rhea Ripley's a star, and she's ignoring all these fucking people.
It's a great story by John Hughes.
There you go.
It's an 80s teen movie being played by these wrestlers from various countries here in this Judgment Day. Australia, Ireland, Queens, Mexico.
And Guadalajara. Don't forget there. Or that's Guatemala. I'm sorry. The country of Guadalajara. But now this intersects here with some main event bullshit going on, because at this point, they've set Gunther up earlier in the show with a promo and a video package, which had brilliant material and brilliant delivery. And the delivery obviously is his. The material, if it's not his, because it fits him perfectly, then they got brilliant writers all of a fucking say, because this guy should be saying this shit. It fits perfectly. And he's a modern heel with a timeless gimmick. But for this 2.5 minutes or whatever it was, this is how you build a star. So then, the top of the 9 o'clock hour, Priest leaves John Hughes High School so that he can go out to the ring and say, "All rise for El Campeon." And the response was kind of, eh. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
And that, I think both of these things cannot coexist. But anyway, so he calls Gunther out immediately, and Gunther, he does the same thing. He's got same kind of great heel attitude and delivery and condescension. And he said, just, I'll do you a favor, save you the embarrassment, hand me my title and move on right now. And Priest does the thing where they're trying to obviously make him a baby face here, with not only with his opponent being a heel, but also with the sympathetic story that he's saying, I fought on the streets for 20 years just to get here. And you've been given everything, Gunther. And then it's almost like an AEW promo. Tell me what you think, Brian. But when he's saying to Gunther, if you think this is so easy and this has never been your dream, you just came here because you're so good, we don't need you here if this has never been your dream. That's AEW-ish or or centric, isn't it?
Currently, but that starts with WWE. Once the whole boyhood dream thing for Shawn Michaels started, and even that was bullshit because Shawn Michaels didn't grow up watching WWF in San Antonio. All of a sudden, it became about people who appreciate the privilege of being in WWE because it was their childhood dream. And that's why you see so many promos now from adults talking about how the child in them would be so happy to see what they are doing right now on wrestling and the rough journey it took to get to TV to make all this money.
Well, anyway, Gunther was strong and he was a heel. You know, being on the streets is a choice. Blame your parents for not giving you a good life. Just to fucking compared Priest and the fans to street trash. And I don't think Priest wasn't strong enough coming back, whether it's the material, the delivery, the attitude, whatever. Except when he finally got to people at the end, they almost had to. It was like, if they didn't cheer "God Bless America" or something, when he called him a boring, privileged, conceited scumbag. But, it wasn't.
What's the privilege exactly? That he won his matches?
Well, apparently it also because he just blew through NXT, because they don't say that, well, Gunther's been around, Walter, been around for 15 fucking years or whatever on his own. Was a little fat, chubby kid. But they're telling the best story they can tell, and Priest didn't have, to me, the material or the fire to bow back up at a heel like Gunther when they're trying to obviously establish him as a upcoming babyface world champion. And then that's, then we...
Does Gunther have to win the belt at SummerSlam? Can you see any way around that?
Boy, I sure hope he does, because I don't know why he would lose. And at this point, like I said, if they're going in this direction anyway, where Priest will be out of the Judgment Day and a babyface single, and then obviously Rhea is already the biggest babyface female on the roster and over most males. They're going to separate her because she and Dominic are going to be some issues. So the Judgment Day will probably, if it continues as a group, I would think would be Finn and JD, who are a tag team, and Dominic potentially and Liv, so that Rhea could have somebody to interact with. And, that's kind of where the sides are going to go, one would think.
All right.
But nevertheless, so then that's the thing, is that then they have Priest and Brown Strongman. So there's the big, fucking bucket-headed babyface against Damian Priest, after Priest has just been out there telling people how he worked and lived on the streets for years, selling pencils on the street corner and walking uphill in a blizzard both ways and now he's against another babyface. And, honestly, like I said, I like the show if I don't watch the matches. Brown's matches are never really technical masterpieces, but for Priest, here was the finish. 3 spin kicks to the head that didn't look very good. And then the other guy picks him up for a slam and his knee buckles, and Priest hits kind of a half-ass stinger splash in the corner and a choke slam 1, 2, 3. And he wasn't impressive winning this match. Then Gunther comes in and they get in a little fight. And Gunther rolls out and they yell at each other. I'm wanting to support Priest, but I'm thinking he may need the foundation specialist to even his concrete. That shit can get off a level, concrete and asphalt, driveways, things of that nature, paving stones.
Well, with that, we won't be telling you about a paving stone sponsor. We don't have one currently. However, Jim, maybe Priest needs some advice. Maybe he just needs to get on the phone and call somebody. If you're going to do that, you need a good plan.
Well, you need a plan of how to get to your emergency phone. Now, everybody needs an emergency phone, right? That's in case of cataclysmic weather like tornadoes, hurricanes, monsoons, whether guerrilla or otherwise. What you do is you take a phone and you bury it in a cardboard box 1 foot deep in a special marked place in your backyard. And that way, if all your power is out, you're cut off from society, you can take a shovel out in the backyard, dig this fucking phone up, open that box, and call the authorities. You've heard about these plans, haven't you?
No, I've not heard about. No one. You shouldn't be burying phones a foot deep in your on
it's
your
a
property.
Big thing. It's a big thing in the suburbs now. All the people awaiting the next cataclysm or catastrophe or potentially January 2025, whatever horrible thing happens to the world. That way you've got a phone buried in case of emergency. You don't want to spend a lot of money, folks, on that phone plan, but you got to make sure you got a phone plan. Because if you went out in the middle of nuclear fallout and you had no electricity and no phone service and everybody in the whole world is off the grid, if you went out in your backyard and took a shovel and dug a foot down to a cardboard shoebox that you then opened up your special emergency phone, and you didn't have any goddamn phone plan, wouldn't you feel like an idiot? So what everybody needs to do to make sure they don't lose money or waste money is right now go to Mint Mobile, because Mint Mobile has a special unlimited deal, the high-speed data, the unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network, $15 a month. That means as long as you keep this thing operating, for heaven's sake, it's only going to cost you a couple of $100 a year to bury that phone in the backyard. And right now,
well, again, this is for your phones that you use, not phones you bury in your backyard. Let's talk about applications of Mint Mobile for people with active phones they are using on a day-to-day basis.
Oh, well, if you just want to just willy-nilly just use a phone right out in public in front of God and everybody, yeah, it's still $15 a month. And you can text anybody you want. And you can talk to anybody you want as long as they'll speak to you. You can send pictures of your family, your friends, your vacation, your pets, your genitals, whatever you like. And that's just as many as you want. So I'll tell you what, if you send a picture of your dick to 1,500 people, sooner or later, you're going to get some idiot that says, I like that.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about how that works, but let's advise people not to do that.
Well, you got to spread your net out and your network.
Just go on Tinder. No genital photos necessary.
On Tinder?
Or go on any dating site.
Tender, legal Tinder?
You don't know what Tinder is?
I don't understand this computer technology these days, but Mint Mobile does, and they are here to rescue you and all your friends. See, your friends and your family, and even if your family, if you don't particularly like members of your family, they can still get the phone plan. Just don't give them your number. But they can do every $15 a month is where it starts, folks. Say bye-bye to the overpriced wireless plan. You got to be a new customer. It's a new customer offer. But you go to mintmobile.com/JCE, the 3-month premium wireless plan, $15 a month, $45 in total. See, I did the math for you. That's if you got a smartphone, you can just do the math on your phone because it's smart. And then you can call somebody and tell them what the answer is because you got a phone plan from mintmobile.com/JCE. Now, you got to pay the $45 up front for the 3 months because a lot of you people are goddamn just deadbeats. Let's just face it.
All right, let's face it. You shouldn't be insulting everyone. What are you doing?
As many people as are listening to this program, we're reaching a pretty good-sized, segment of the deadbeat demographic. But if you're going to have to pay people up front because you got bad credit, you might as well not pay them much up front. What's $45 over 3 months? That's $15 a month. That is $3.75 a week, except for months with 31 days, in which case it would be a little higher and in Alaska and Hawaii. So right now, go to mintmobile.com/JCE and spend approximately as much money as I was just talking about, which will be less than you would spend if you go somewhere else to do the same goddamn thing.
Mintmobile.com's
yes.
Code JCE.
/JCE.
/JCE. If only we could. But,
hey!
Let's get back to whatever you're going to say about WWE Raw.
Well, that's where I was going. Then we had an interlude of a girls' 6-man tag team match, and then we're still with the Judgment Day.
6-woman, not 6-man.
Well, it was a girls' 6-man tag match. All right, a women's 6-man tag match.
No, it would be a girls. Well, you don't say girls. It would be a 6-woman tag match.
Well, 6 of the women are having a 6-man tag match. But then they went back to the Judgment Day. And again, John Hughes, is that what you said? So now JD and Finn, they get their little scene in the rom-com with Rhea. And she says it's okay that Liv helped them win the tag team title because then they've got the belts and fuck her. And Dominic comes in and says, hey, I'm going to teach Jey Uso a lesson and nobody talks about mommy like that. And are you stupid? What are you picking a fight with him for? Well, I'll cancel it. He said, what are you, a coward? And then, oh, you're my mommy and you belong to me. Excuse me, and walks off again. And it just... This is like a daily soap opera. Remember in the summertime when you were out of school, when you were like in the 3rd grade, and the only thing, well, no, you don't, but the only thing on daytime television was soap operas. And these people just had conversation after conversation. And, finally, once every 6 months, somebody would have a major operation or be hit by a fucking car. Otherwise, they were just having coffee in their living room talking. Or at the hospital. You ever see General Hospital?
I have, yes.
They did a lot of talking at the hospital.
They did. You think it's more like that or more like Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman?
I liked Mary Hartman, Mary Hartman.
Did you watch it when it aired?
Yes. It was 11 o'clock. Well, no, 11:30. I'm sorry, I tell a lie. It would have been right after the local news. At first run, I watched it. And Victor Killian, who was the grandfather who played the Fernwood Flasher, was also in some of the classic Universal horror films of the 1930s and early 40s, including, oh God damn it, he was in the Devil Doll, where the doctor shrunk Cyclops, shrunk the well, that's two different movies, but shrunk them down to tiny little size, did Dr. Cyclops, who was Albert Decker. I remember that much. Are we going back to Raw?
Any thoughts on the recent passing of Martin Mull?
I didn't even know he was sick. See, I've been out of the loop here lately. What happened to him?
He passed away.
Well, I mean, what was the cause? Do you have...
Hold on, I don't have it in front of me. Martin Mull.
Because Martin Mull, he not only, after Mary Hartman kind of ran its course, they turned it into a comedy talk show, a parody of The Tonight Show or Merv Griffin or whatever, called Fernwood Tonight, and he was the host of that, and the kind of Bill Murray-ish smarmy lounge singer, except he was the smarmy television personality. And he was great. Yeah, Fred Willard was the sidekick.
Yeah.
Before WKRP in Cincinnati.
Yeah, they were good together. He died age 80 of a long-term illness. It's not explained what that is, but 80 years old.
Holy shit, he was 80? Well, he was, when I was 18, he would have been like 35. Holy shit, I'm fucking older than I thought. I'm as close to 80 now as he was then, or something.
Any thoughts on the passing of your longtime family friend, Richard Simmons?
You know, it hurt deep down in my bowels. I was sorry to hear about Richard's passing because of all the many happy hours that we had spent on the treadmill and on the various workout machines and knee bends. And actually, he used to have me just bend over. And he would just say, just bend over and stay there. And I said, how am I getting any exercise like this? And then, well, I won't go into the
this
rest
is not
of it.
really much of a tribute to the man. I don't know what you're doing. On that topic, any thoughts on the passing of your longtime family friend, Dr. Ruth?
Well, no, Dr. Ruth and my mother didn't get along. Mama Cornette thought that Dr. Ruth was a potty mouth. Saying those various things and all those biological terms.
All right.
They didn't say polite women didn't say that on television back in the 30s.
Well, this has been Obituaries. Back to Raw.
Anyway, so should we take the side trip? No, let's finish up the whole Judgment Day Rhea Ripley-ness thing here, because there was something else. Ah, yes. So then Dominic fights Jey Uso, and they opened up with what I may categorize as the worst punches I've ever seen thrown in a professional wrestling match, and I fast-forwarded to the finish, which was basically Liv and Dominic ended up on the floor on top of each other again. Totally accidentally. Well, and then she rolled on top of him on purpose for a while, and then Rhea comes down and gets a big pop, and Liv runs away, and, you know, Rhea's fucking yelling at Dominic, get back in the ring, because somehow the match has still been going after it's a minute later, but he gets in and Jey Uso spears him and splashes him and pins him, and Rhea walks off on him again. And then they go to the back later on where Priest is laughing at Dom because of his ineptitude. And Rhea walks in and says, I don't belong to anybody. I'm not yours. You're mine. You're mine? Does that mean she still likes him even though he's been dry humping Liv?
Yeah, she hasn't explained why.
And I thought she was walking off on him because we were building to the point where she gives him a big goddamn power bomb and fucking puts her foot on his chest, 1, 2, 3, and switches full-fledged baby face. But so I don't know, but they're drawing this out, aren't they? And then that was pretty much the end of Raw is Ripley. And I could say that Drew McIntyre is brilliant again. You know, would you like to talk any about that segment? That's the other thing of note.
Let's talk about Drew McIntyre.
Well, they've got the people roaring, wanting the match. If the heel, Drew McIntyre, says these people want Drew McIntyre versus CM Punk, oh, yay! And then Pierce said, well, how bad do you want the match? I want it bad. Well, then he says, I'll do it more than, I want it more than anything. And people are wanting it. And Drew said, please, Pierce, make it official. And Pierce says, I need one thing. And he calls the 2 referees in that Drew had done what it laid out, whatever. All you need to do is apologize to them for what you did. And Drew's like, why? And they go back and forth. And actually, Pierce is doing a tremendous job because you can tell they're letting him be more of a personality and more of himself rather than just the dry guy that was making a match or standing in the ring for a contract signing 2 years ago, right? Now he's firing up at him because he can cut promos because he was a wrestler, for fuck's sake, that many of these audience may not know. Anyway, so he wants him to apologize and he'll make the match. And Drew steps up to him and said, no. And then he has a meltdown, which was great, about how the referees have screwed me and you've screwed me and Punk screwed me. And it's a tantrum he's having. And then Pierce tells him, well, in that case, you're still suspended. And he pie faces the referees down and goes face to face with Adam Pearce. And then here comes Seth Franklin Rollins. And he hits the ring, gets a big fight. Drew bails out. But again, they don't even have to have the other half of the match in the building or on the show. The people are doing the work for it. They're chanting for Punk and this whole thing. And the longer they stretch it out, the longer they want it. But I love Drew McIntyre.
He's certainly been one of the highlights on the show. Do you think they're going to do something with Adam Pearce? He's getting more and more physical.
Well, no, I think it's like the deal at the press conference where he shot the elbow at Pearce and Pearce sold it, but he came back. It was more like you would see it at, as we talked about, the boxing press conference or maybe UFC press conference, whatever, rather than the traditional wrestling stuff where everybody can't help but go too far. And if you really did beat that fucking guy up, you'd probably be in jail because he's not a wrestler, whatever the case. I think they're letting Aldis in his own way. He's the more James Bondish, manipulator, but Pearce can cut a pretty good promo and stick his finger in your face as the voice of pretty much reason. Usually he's usually on the side of logic and normalcy. So they got different personalities, but I don't think that means they're going to get either one of them in the ring anytime in the next, 6 or 8 weeks or whatever. All right, we got to mention it before we move on. Did you watch the Eric Rowan Wyatt VHS?
In the background on mute, I was watching other things at that time, so no disrespect to him, but I don't know what he said or if it was any good or not.
Well, here are my notes. Really incredible delivery, emotional, extremely babyface. How will this or can this apply to a professional wrestling program? ? It's good something. But I don't.
That's what Bray Wyatt was. All those Firefly Funhouse segments and everything. It was, in my eyes, bad wrestling TV. I used to say it looked like a show on Adult Swim. At times it was that. At times it's a good Rob Zombie. There are no good Rob Zombie horror films. I take that back.
Yeah, I was about to say.
At times it's a modern day horror film. At times it's a throwback to other horror films. At times it's the bad memories of being a VHS tape trader. I mean, it's all sorts of different things, but it's not wrestling. And everyone's been a good performer in it for anything other than this.
Well, then he put the sheep mask back on. And then later on, Gable goes out to the ring. He has solved the greatest wrestling mystery ever. Uncle Howdy is really Bo Dallas. And again, you know, because Gable's not with it or whatever the fuck. And he calls Bo Dallas out to solve all of their problems right now, face to face. And out walks Bo Dallas with no music. And this is the first time he's been goddamn seen on this program in how long could it have been? Has it been 2 years?
Maybe longer than that. I can't remember the last time he wrestled on Raw. It may be much longer than that, other than the Uncle Howdy appearances.
Okay, but the point is, I just like to call out Bo Dallas. Well, here's this guy that we haven't technically seen on this show for 2 days. Has he been sitting and catering every Monday waiting for somebody to ask him to come out? Anyway, the Creed brothers. And boy, howdy, hopefully they've been working on overtime trying to perfect their craft if they're going to be involved in bigger things. And this, they attack Bo in the aisle. They're wearing suits and they beat Bo up and stand over him, and Bo laughs. And then they beat Bo up more and he laughs again. And then they give him a big double team move and a big German suplex, and he's still laughing. And then Gable squats over him and screams, "What are you laughing at?" And I believe, did he say, "Here you are"? Or "There you are"? Or something. Somebody was there. And the lights switched off and we get the blackout and the piano music. Do you have the piano music, or did you plug the piano in today?
Oh, shoot. I had the organ going. Give me a minute.
Well, it's not worth it. We won't be here this long. The piano music and the fog and the heels are scared.
No, that's not it.
That's not it.
Whoa.
Oh, good Lord.
I'll keep looking.
Is that your burglar alarm?
I can't comment on that. I'll keep looking.
So the heels are scared and you see a light. And in the light, you see silhouettes and there's a lantern. And they come towards the ring and they get on the apron. And Gable and the Creeds got their hands up like we're ready for a fight, and then Gable bails on them. And then the Creeds turn around and see these guys fucking, they bail out. And then Bo, who these, again, as 3 people are trying to push, they've just repeatedly been beating on him. And he's still laughing. And he gets up and they all pose in front of the lantern while he laughs. And it took much, much longer for them to all actually do that than it took me to tell you about it. So that's why, I mean, if they can't fucking, if they hurt them and they laugh, I mean, how are you going to win that? And now they're baby faces. What was it, 3-4 weeks ago? They committed mass murder at the gorilla position. And now they're baby faces. Anyway. And Braun beat the shit out of some people at the end. Sami Zayn and Ilya Kuryakin. I'm watching a weekly 60 to 90 minute dramatic program that's padded out to 3 hours with middling wrestling matches that are either predictable or that you don't really want to see to begin with. But I love the stars of the program. And I really can't wait to see who's going to be fucking who next. Metaphorically speaking, that is.
You know what I realized? I got lost in song over here. I agree with everything you said. Whatever that said may be. No,
You didn't hear what I said for about the last minute and a half because you were trying to find your goddamn Liberace key of fucking G and a half.
No, I was listening to you. It was just
that was Zachary over there. Woo!
Zachary, oh, very good.
Do you know I have the Monster Mash album that Zachary did where he covered...
That's not the original, I was going to say.
Well, he covered the Bobby Boris Pickett classic, but in his own inimitable style. And also there were other tunes that were written just for this album, just for him, because he was on TV. It was the early 60s. There was Hurry, Berry, Baby. One of the refrains was him, oh, I've got to dispose of the body. And there was, you've heard of the Bristol Stomp. He sang the Pistol Stomp. The kids in Bristol all carry a pistol when they do the Pistol Stomp and gunfire.
What do you think of some of those old gimmicks in rock and roll, like Screamin' Lord Sutch? He would like show up to his shows in a hearse that like was painted with his logo, and he would like come out of the back in a coffin.
Oh, well, of course, you're asking me like I'm going to hate gimmicks like that. And people coming out of any kind of a box are over. But
what about Screamin' Jay Hawkins? You ever see any footage of him?
I've heard the music. I've not searched out footage, to be quite honest. But I was going to tell you a hearse story. Not Hertz now, kids, not the rental car agency, but the meat wagon that's hauling you to your final repose. Well, I have a great picture of me and Brian Hildebrand in Cincinnati, Ohio at the Gardens one night when we both went to the Mid-Atlantic Wrestling Show before we were both photographers at that point in time. And Brian actually was wrestling on, the Independence in West Virginia even by then. But Dr. Creep brought his mobile mortuary down from Dayton. He was the evening horror movie host on, I think it was WDEF in Dayton. One of the there was like 2.5 TV stations in Dayton at that point. This was like 1981. And it was a hearse that had been converted to be like a limousine. And he even had a bar in the back, and the walls had like velvet, like it's lined like a coffin, and it had painted on the side Dr. Creep's mobile mortuary. And he would do personal appearances in that thing, but because he was a wrestling fan too, and Dayton's only 45 miles, they came down that's when Brian was at college in Dayton. How about in college at Dayton? Or what? You get the picture.
Whatever happened to Brian's dad's videos?
I'm pretty sure that I would imagine that either Brian's wife Pam or potentially maybe even Tommy Noe might have got some of those. He had a bunch also, but the Smoky Mountain stuff. But good Lord, all the videos that who knows if they still exist. Brian's dad would take a camera to independent shows when there hardly were any in the 80s and shoot stuff that I'm pretty sure that was the only camera present at the time. I don't know where all that stuff went. One night in Pittsburgh, and folks, I should say Brian Hildebrand, aka Mark Curtis, the referee in WCW Smoky Mountain and etc. in the 90s, but his father Regis was a cop in Pittsburgh. And every time that we went to Pittsburgh for Crockett, Brian and his dad would pick me up, and we'd go to the Eaton Park out there at the airport, and Brian loved the sticky buns. And then we'd go down to the show together, and then they'd bring me back to the hotel at night. We'd have dinner, whatever. And one that Bubba Rogers had just started. And, so I said, can we take Bubba back to the hotel also? Well, this was when it was early on. Remember, Bubba was fucking with Dusty, right? So he was on top right away. And he had fucking heat. You had to pull your car up a ramp out of the Civic Arena in Pittsburgh. And with a big crowd of the people were crowded around, the security was not what it could have been at the end of that ramp and out in the parking lot. And we come up and the people see that Bubba's in there because he's so fucking big. How can you miss him? And I start ducking down and people start throwing shit at Regis' car and crowding around. And I looked up and a second later, he had opened the door and pulled his goddamn service revolver out and held it up in the air. And it started barking police commands to get the fuck out of here. And people were climbing lamp posts and fucking diving over partitions and concrete walls to get away from this guy that they were used to the wrestlers coming out and being sitting ducks, but nobody ever got out of the goddamn car with a fucking gun and theoretically a badge. He didn't have time to show that, but where was I going with any of that?
I don't know where we were going. Lord knows where we've been. Jim, before we wrap up this segment, any thoughts, news breaking as we're recording? Another unfortunate passing to report. At the age of 94, Bob Newhart has passed away.
Oh, no! And see, there's the thing. If you'd have said, I would have said Bob Newhart would be 100. Whereas I was shocked at, who the fuck was I shocked at was 80? Who just died? We were talking about something else. Martin Mull. God damn it.
He was only 14 years Bob Newhart's junior. That's surprising.
Well, but Martin Mull was also 17 years older than me, which I found surprising. But I don't find it surprising that Bob Newhart would be 30, what was he, 94, would be 32 years or whatever older than me because he's been around for so fucking long. So it's all relative. But
were you a fan of his comedy, the albums, or the
yes.
Later television shows?
Well, no, the television. See, I saw the Bob Newhart show, the first one, not the one in Vermont with the end, but the psychiatrist in Chicago. That was regular viewing, first run when I was able to watch television in my younger days. So no, I was a big fan of, and also I had a thing for. So what was his secretary's name? God damn it. Remember the redhead secretary?
Yeah,
she was quite sassy.
What'd you think of the ending of the second show?
I thought it was clever. It was clever. I don't want to see it on a wrestling program, but I'll take it from now. No, I never watched the second Bob Newhart show with the Inn in Vermont. Because that's when I was on the road and I wasn't watching any primetime television. Then I started catching it in reruns later on. And I grew to like that one probably, maybe, better than the original just because of Larry and Daryl and all of they had a wider cast of knuckleheads.
He had the first massive comedy record ever.
The button-down mind of Bob Newhart.
Yeah, that was a game changer.
And he would do the one-sided telephone conversations on the Tonight Show or whatever, the same thing as he did in his office as a psychiatrist on the Newhart Show. And that was they would play these on some radio stations. His spoken word, one-sided telephone conversation records they would play on the radio. And you would be able to figure out from what he said what the conversation was, what was going on, and why it was funny. Well, that's terrible. Not only 94 in the prime of his life.
Well, we send our sympathies out to the friends and fans of Bob Newhart.
And especially to Suzanne Plachette. But hey, Suzanne, if you're single now, Ron, what's the What's the email she could write in for my phone number?
There's no email to write in, and hopefully she's not listening, or any of her representatives. But Jim, if they were and they heard this show, their head might spin. They may need some help with getting to sleep or just overall aches and pains, and we know where you could send them.
Well, I'll tell you exactly where you can send them, Brian. You can send them down the road to CB Distillery, just right down there, the last house on the right. And that's where you go in to get the real good stuff it's pure, effective, high quality, clean ingredients, no fluff, no fillers. Ladies and gentlemen, ain't no duds in this bowl of popcorn. There ain't no rotten apples in this barrel. It's all pure, effective CBD solutions designed to help support your health and well-being, your mood, your mannerisms, your emotional and mental stability and ability to deal with modern-day stresses and aggravations that might come your way. And as a matter of fact, Brian, do you know they have done 2 non-clinical surveys. 81% of customers experienced even more calm. 80% said CBD helped with pain after physical activity. 90% said they slept better with CBD. And 1% said that they thought that they were in the chocolate fountain at the Waldorf Astoria brunch. But that may be an outlier.
That may be in the margin of error. I'm not sure about that 1%.
And these are 2 non-clinical surveys also. They didn't go to the clinics. That's where all the fucking sick people go. That'll skew your average right there to the negative. No, they went at non-clinical. They went out in the street. Matter of fact, I think they were canvassing neighborhoods in San Bernardino. And the streets where you get the real people's opinion. They talk to the backbone of America. And if they couldn't get to the backbone, they at least talk to the tailbone. And folks, right now, if you struggle with a health concern and you haven't found relief and you'd like to just know one way or another, just Lord, take me and get it over with, or help me find some kind of peace. Well, 2 million customers have gone to CB Distillery and they're alive to tell the tale. They are the source to trust over at the CB Distillery. And if you want 20% off right now to get you started, go to cbdistillery.com and use the code JCE for 20% off whatever fine products you may be purchasing from their online store there, cbdistillery.com. The promo code is JCE, 20% off. That's like 20% off peace of mind, 20% off a good night's sleep. It's cheaper than ever. It's within your reach, within your grasp. Ladies and gentlemen, I urge you, take advantage of this incredible opportunity. Down this stuff and go on a magic carpet ride with Steppenwolf.
With CB Distillery, no magic carpet supplied, but CB Distillery one more time.
Well, no, you got to bring your own carpet.
What's that promo code, Jim?
cbdistillery.com. Use the promo code JCE, 20% off. Bring your own carpet. Take the CBD, lay down on the carpet, leave your window open, and hope for the best.
With CB Distillery. Oh, that sounds awful.